Hello, I am Abram, and I will be presenting disaster management in Brazil. Brazil is the fifth largest country in the world and the largest country in South America. Brazil has over 200 million people residing within its borders. Brazil is divided into 26 states, and Brazil is very biodiverse with tropical rainforests in the north and northwest and semi-arid environments in the northeast and central part of Brazil. Brazil is very fortunate within its geographical location. Many of the hurricanes pass just to the north of Brazil, which affect many of its Caribbean and Central American neighbors. And Brazil is not prone to many of the earthquakes that many of its South American neighbors are faced with in the west. Brazil is faced with cycles of floods and droughts. Brazil is faced with droughts contributed to the El Nino weather pattern, which occurs every 4 to 7 years and causes warming of ocean water temperatures. When these weather patterns occur, regions in the northeast and central part of Brazil tend to face droughts. Droughts account for 32% of Brazil's disasters and affects the most number of people in Brazil. Furthermore, Brazil is prone to La Nina weather pattern, which is the cooling of Pacific waters. When this weather pattern occurs, more than usual rainfall is brought to Brazil and causes flooding of its riverbanks in the plain areas and flooding in the hillsides. The flooding in the hillsides affect many of its poor members of the population because they tend to build illegal settlements or shantytowns known as favelas. They are poorly constructed settlements that don't adhere to building codes, and when these floods come, they tend to cause landslides and wash away many of these non-permanent settlements. In response to floods and droughts, the Brazilian government has created the National Civil Defense. This National Civil Defense was specifically identified in the 1988 Constitution to plan and promote permanent defense against public disasters, especially droughts and floods. Brazil's military rule from 1964 to 1985 was highly centralized in its disaster response policies and procedures. Many of its implementations were from the top down. In 1988, the adaptation of the Constitution in Brazil created much autonomy amongst its 26 states and municipalities. Currently, many of Brazil's disaster response are decentralized, and many of the responses are triggered from the bottom up. Brazil works with many international NGOs and nations. Many of Brazil's disaster response mechanisms and structures are modeled after the U.S. For instance, their online training program is modeled from FEMA's online training program, and Brazil's CBRN is modeled after the U.S. military CBRN units. Also, the World Bank has donated millions of dollars to develop Brazil's disaster response. Brazil has been criticized as being more reactionary than proactive. When disasters occurred, they would relocate the affected people and give money to the citizens. This caused many clientism and patronage system where money was given for votes. Brazil has clarified that by issuing their citizens individual cards, which they can monitor online. That concludes my presentation on disaster management in Brazil. Thank you for your time.